Hey there, this is James Carberry, founder of Sweetfish Media and one of the co-hosts of this show. For the last year and a half, I've been working on my very first book. In it, I share the three-part framework we've used as the foundation for our growth here at Sweetfish. Now, there are lots of companies that have raised a bunch of money and have grown insanely fast. We've talked to a lot of them on the show. We've decided to bootstrap our business, which usually equates to really slow growth. But using the strategy outlined in the book, we're on pace to be one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in 2020. The book is called Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. And I'm thrilled to tell you that the book has officially launched. If you're a fan of audiobooks like me, you can find the book on Audible. Or if you like physical books, you can find it on Amazon. Just search Content-Based Networking or James Carberry, that's Carbary, in Audible or Amazon, and it should pop right up. If you're listening to this between January 7th and January 10th, you can snag the Kindle version of the book for just 99 cents. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. It's a new year and a new decade, and we're celebrating by rounding up the top 20 episodes as we look back on 2019. We'll be sharing them here throughout the month of January in our hashtag Best of 2019 series. Today's episode is number 16 in our countdown of the top 20 episodes of 2019. It features one of the co-founders over at Terminus, Sangram Vajre, who's been a repeat guest here on B2B Growth and also happens to be one of our favorite humans on the planet here at Sweetfish.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, if you hear a little extra pep in my voice today, it's because I'm finally getting to sit down with Sangram Vajre of Terminus. Sangram, how you doing today?
I am great, Nikki. Great to hear your voice. Love what you do. Love your authentic self. So it's fun to be here.
Yeah, y'all should know, we talked a little bit offline and Sangram has already taught me like 3 life-altering things this morning. So hopefully we get to do that for you listeners now. And we're going to be talking about a couple of things today. We're going to be talking about podcasting, which is something that Sangram has obviously been crushing it at. And he's just written a piece on LinkedIn that I think really did a good job of not just making the case for podcasting at the business level, but really letting us in on, how it affected him and the other things in his life and career that it's spilled into. So Sangram, can't wait for you to share that with us. We're going to talk about how that affects sales. We're going to talk about his book, the experience that he had writing that pretty briefly, and then his newsletter, Becoming Intentional. And so first, for anybody who might have been living under a rock real quick, Sangram, give us a bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at Terminus are up to.
Sure. So, but for the folks who don't know me, most recently I ran marketing at Pardot and we got acquired through ExactTarget and then went to Salesforce. So I spent a couple of years at Salesforce and then started Terminus about 5 years ago when ABM or account-based marketing wasn't even a thing, and planted a flag at that time. That's about 2015. Looking back 5 years from now, it's really surreal because we're about 200 people based here in Atlanta and San Francisco. I ended up writing, as you said, like 2 books on the topic, which was something my dad would be very proud of because he didn't think I could write. So that's kind of a side thing that just happened. And learn a lot about the idea that without a community, which I seldom say, that we are simply a commodity. So each one of us, no matter where you are, what you do, products, services, or just a person doing something, I think we all need to have a sense of community. And that was probably my biggest lesson I learned in the last 5 years.
For sure. And, you're speaking to me with that one. Community is literally what keeps me going. It's what keeps me alive. And I think people underestimate, especially as individuals, our capacity to contribute to a community or to create one. And so I see that at the heart of a lot of your content. And it's one of the reasons why I'm a fan. But podcasting in particular. So one of the things, yes, that you gained from that was this sense of community and sort of seeing what you could do when you build one the way that you have. But another way that you've seen it be valuable is in terms of driving sales. Hit us with that. Let us know what that looked like for you.
Well, when we started the podcast, the Flip My Funnel podcast, I remember just like being curious, right? Like, this is not trying to get case studies, but just being curious with people around like, all right, how are you doing? I started with interviewing a lot of the folks in the company to just get comfortable with the idea of podcasting. Before even I talk to somebody externally, I'm like, well, this is my team. I can edit it and all that stuff and they'll be okay. But you start learning how to talk and how to communicate, and more importantly, how to listen in this whole process of podcasting. And what's incredibly amazing is that when you do the podcast, the other person who one may not have ever done a podcast before, they just open up because you're just having a conversation. And the better you get at that, the more you can get to know. So the reason I kind of think about that, podcasting actually is like a flywheel that can drive your sales, is because one of the stories, or like all the stories that are in the book, came from the podcast first. And I would be just curious. And one of the stories is Thomson Reuters, where Jillian Gartner said that they have 95% win rate. And I'm like, well, get out of here. Like, that's impossible. And she's like, no, that's what happened. And she shared with that on the podcast. We brought her in the office. We did a case study with her. We did all hands with her. Then we wrote that story in the book. She came along and speaking at conferences with her because I thought nobody's going to believe me. So I need to bring the real life Jillian Gartner over here. So all of these things, if you think about it, started with this 20-minute conversation with someone I was just interested in what their day in a life looks like, doing an account-based marketing director at that company. And it completely changed our sales process, because now a lot of the sales emails that send out are like not a case study necessarily, or not a data sheet or a product marketing fancy stuff. It's like, hey, do you want to listen to someone who actually just did this and leveraged our platform or the strategy? Here's a 10-minute snippet from it on the podcast. No need to sign up, no need to do anything. And like, people get like, oh yeah, I can listen. And you can hear in the voice what's going on with this person. That's not fake. It's not over polished. So I think people are underestimating, as you said, the value of it. But even more, I think they're under leveraging when they're doing it on what levels it can be leveraged throughout your organization and in your community.
For sure. Like if folks think about it as just another channel when it comes to marketing, then they're going to want to measure it that same way a lot of the time. And I think that's the miss. It's like you're talking about, though. But what I do also think is that this curiosity being at the heart of it, if you do apply that to how you approach these other channels of marketing, then you'll win. You just can't take what you do there and apply it to podcasting. It's got to be its own thing, built on the kind of curiosity you're talking about, which you said made it a lot easier to write your book. You said it took you 3.5 months. Get out of here. Tell me how you swung that.
Well, I mean, so by the time, we decided maybe late last year that, hey, let's write our second book, right? It's time. We've done the first book. We wrote the very first book on the idea of account-based marketing. And a lot has changed in the last 4 years. And the podcast has been there for about a year as well. So we had over 300 episodes from the podcast. We had over 100 audio recordings from all the Flip on for conferences we have done. We have a new framework that we have built and seen it in action in the last 3 years called the team framework. So we almost had all the content. So the 3 months that we spent was really making sure that there's a story here. There are, like, the people on the podcast become stories in the book as we share. So everything was almost there. It was more about, does it flow? What do we want to talk about? What is the most important? It was more of weeding out the things that we don't want to have it in there. And we kind of galvanized the whole team to say that, all right, we're going to pick the two or three things, and that's it. And we're going to not look at all the other things. And in the book, if you notice in the last 30 pages are actually episodes of the most important podcast we want people to listen, because we put the content from it in the book. And the book would be like this big, right? Like if you wanted to do that. So we're tailoring it. So the reason it took only 3.5 months or even 3.5 months was to go down to the most important things about stories, about myths that we wanted to dismiss, about the framework that we wanted to make sure it's heart and center, and about the stories we want to share, because we had like 20 of them and we had to come down to like 6 so that people can absorb it and do something. So a lot of people, I think, Nikki, think about book as like, well, let me just go in a mountain and then look at the mountains and write. No. I don't think about it that way. I think about it as like, we're going to write something, or I wanted to do something that is like practical, that people can use it, leverage it, and I'm living and breathing it. It's not something I want to do on a mountain, drinking coffee, watching mules or something like that. Like, this is something real that I wanted to get it out.
So no mule watching was involved.
No, like I'm not like it's funny. Would be like it's been like 3 years of working on it. I'm like, I don't know if I could have done anything. I think I could have only done the book disservice and made it worse if it would have taken a year or 2 years, because everyone has opinion about marketing or books.
Yeah.
And we need to like have your own voice and just get it out there.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. You probably already know that we think you should start a podcast if you haven't already. But what if you have and you're asking these kinds of questions? How much has our podcast impacted revenue this year? How's our sales team actually leveraging the podcast content? If you can't answer these questions, you're actually not alone. This is why Casted created the very first content marketing platform made specifically for B2B podcasting. Now you can more easily search and share your audio content while getting greater visibility into the impact of your podcast. The marketing teams at Drift, Terminus, and here at Sweetfish have started using Casted to get more value out of our podcasts, and you probably can too. You can check out the product in action at casted.us/growth. That's casted.us/growth. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. There's something to be said for not overthinking it. And as I make my way through the book, that's another one of the things that sort of shines through, right? It's so like real world. It's so direct. And yet, like, while it is based on what I would call data points, which are these conversations that you've had with other marketers, it's incredibly conversational. It's incredibly like practical. The way that the I don't even know if I want to call it advice, but the way that the insights come through in the book as much as I've been able to get through so far. But it goes back to what you talked about as far as podcasting being under leveraged. What you just described here is the sheer volume of content that just even one episode of a podcast can create. And in that way, I absolutely agree. Yes, folks are under leveraging it because you got the content itself. And then you just talked about how that sort of informed, spilled into, basically wrote the book for you. And now I've got to believe that some of those experiences are going into one of your newest endeavors, which is the Becoming Intentional newsletter and how you've been sort of journaling. Talk a little bit about how those experiences fed into this and what the goal is of this as it differs from those other.
Well, thanks for asking that, Nikki. So LinkedIn has started this new beta program that they're like start doing newsletters so people can stay there and you can still create a longer form content. Now, even if you think about it, just that, the reason I'm in the beta program is because I've been consistently creating content on LinkedIn that led me to be in this beta program. So it's like a privilege to be in. And one of the first things I wanted to really focus on is this idea of becoming intentional around everything you do. Otherwise, I don't think, as we were talking before recording, I don't think anything really happens by accident that is great in people's life. When we see somebody success and they say they're overnight, no, it's not overnight. We all know that. It took probably 10 years of other type of grinding that led that person to be on that stage or do whatever they're doing in their life. So how do we become intentional in everything we do? So 4 years ago, I started just doing journaling. And people said journaling is really, really good. It's cathartic. It will help you think through it. And I ended up with this very simple formula that just, I think, jumped off the pages for me after a year when I look back on it. And I call it the HEART formula. I wrote it in the first LinkedIn newsletter on becoming intentional, which is what makes me happy? What did I embrace learning this day? What do I need to pay attention to? What's the right thing to do? And probably the most important, I know to you as well, is what am I thankful for, what am I grateful for? And that just became a simple formula of like every night, I would at least 3 to 4 nights a week, I would just write HEART and I would write one word, one sentence, maybe sometimes more, but at least I have something to start off as opposed to staring at a blank page. And what's even more interesting is 2 years ago, my son said, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just writing my heart and something around it. He's like, hey, I want to do it. And he's like, he was 8 at that time. So he and I do that now at least 3 or 4 nights a week. And that has become the greatest bonding time for us. So I feel like if a 9-year-old could do it and if a 40-year-old could do it, anybody could do it. So I think we covered a wide gap there.
Yeah, I love it. And I hadn't ever considered the idea of having a framework or a model for journaling. Because you're right, it can be difficult to figure out, okay, like what part of my day do I want to, or what part of what I've learned do I even want to put down here on paper? How do I organize those thoughts? And, this is the answer, right?
I think it makes it a little easy. It's little sort of scary, because I've faced that. Like, I've had scribbles and all that stuff. I think it just made it a little bit easier for me to, I don't want to stress out about all the stuff that I've already gone through a day. I want to relax this. And it has this incredible calming effect, knowing that I know what I want to write about, because I'm kind of making bookmarking certain things throughout the day automatically. And then it has now become just a fun thing to close your day on. It's like, I did my best. I learned something. I'm grateful for what these things. Here's what I need to pay attention to that I probably just skipped on today, that I need to do home or work or whatever that is. It just closes the loop for me at the end of the day.
I love it so much. Consider it stolen. Listen, guys, I follow Sangram's content. I know a lot of you already do. If you don't, find him on LinkedIn. Sangram, what are other ways that folks can connect with you who are wanting to keep up with you?
I think let's just keep it one, right? Like LinkedIn, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out the Becoming Intentional, because that's where I'm starting to put a little bit more thought and longer form. And hopefully you'll subscribe to that on LinkedIn, and that'd be fun.
Yeah, and just as a note to folks, that's what I saw that was different from just publishing an article on LinkedIn, is that those don't always, because of the algorithm, those don't always find the audience. So the ability to be able to subscribe to it is, I think, what's new and what's super helpful. So even if you're already, following Sangram or connected with them, make sure that if you're wanting to follow him with this newest newsletter, subscribe to it. You won't be sorry, because Sangram's got heart. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. I could fill 1 million podcast episodes with questions I have for you, but today I'll just say thank you and we'll close it out. And good luck with the rest of your day. And I'm so glad that we got to finally do this today, Sangram.
Thank you, Nikki. You're an amazing person.
Thank you. Have a good one.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.